and welcome to this week's episode of Fratello Talks. I'm your host Nacho, and today I'm joined by
RJ.
And we have a very special guest joining us all the way from Switzerland, one of the co-founders of Armin Strom and the head watchmaker for the brand, Claude Greisler. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. So we're going to be having a chat with you today, but of course, before we get into it, let's get into wrist check. What is on your wrist today, Claude?
Today I wear the Orbit. The Orbit is based on our gravity equal force, and it has a very unique date function. It's a date function on demand, which we indicate on the ceramic bezel. And I love blue, so that's the ice blue fume dial, which is a very cool contrast to the open work movement.
Fantastic, great. And RJ, what about you? What's on your wrist today?
I don't have an Armin Strom yet. You never know. But I brought a watch, which is not mine, but it's a loaner. But it ties into Armin Strom as well. It's an Omega Speedmaster, partially skeletonized. So Omega is from the same city as or village. Biel.
City.
It's in Switzerland.
Yeah,
Small city. And there's also a relationship between Armin Strom and Omega, because Armin Strom, the man himself, was doing work for Omega in the 90s, if I'm not mistaken, on Seamaster and Speedmasters to do the skeletonization work.
Exactly, yeah. He was the only independent watchmaker ever collaborated with Omega.
Yeah. So that's why I brought this watch, with a reason. So
Fantastic. And it is the new gray side of the moon.
The new gray side of the moon, or as they say in German, graue Seite der Mond.
Okay.
And it's a fun watch.
Perfect. We'll have our German members of the audience fact check the grammar on that. And speaking of German, I'm wearing my Nomos Weltzeit, the Jungle Limited Edition. So I'm still going strong with this one.
Matching your pants.
Yeah. It also has it has an on-demand function. It's not the date, but it's the skipping time zone skipping thing. So it's also has a bit of a mechanical nod there, but nothing compared to what you guys are doing. So Claude, to kick us off, we should say for those who might have heard the name Armin Strom, or who might have heard your name as well, but might not know more about your personal background or about the brand, could you just give us a little introduction to you, your background, and how you ended up in the position that you're in today for the brand?
Yeah, of course. My background is I'm born in a watchmaker family. Got trained by my grandmother assembling pocket watches. And so for me, it was very obvious to become a watchmaker. Graduated first in the watchmaker school, 4 years to become a watchmaker. Then continued my study in watch restoration to become an expert for antique watches. Unfortunately, not a lot of job opportunities when I quit my first degree. So there was more demand in engineering, did another degree in watch engineering. I then ended up at Christophe Claret, building watches for different brands. That time, back in the days, Claret did not have his own brand, so we were mainly working on tourbillons, minute repeaters for other brands, so a pure movement supplier.
And when was that?
That was 2003 to 2007.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And so what were your ties personally to Armin Strom?
To Armin Strom, that goes back to my childhood. I'm born in the same city where Armin Strom is from, where Armin Strom started his watchmaker career. He started his career in Burgdorf. Burgdorf is called the door of the Emmental Valley. The Emmental Valley is more known for the cheese than for watchmaking.
Right.
But Mr. Strom started his career in Burgdorf by producing skeletonized watches, because he had a clear philosophy of, as a watchmaker, so he was running a watchmaker shop together with his wife. His wife was selling watches, and he was doing the repairs and the restoration on mechanical watches. And he had the vision of that the beauty of the mechanical watch, the movement, should not be covered with the dial, that the movement should be visible from the front and from the back side. And this is how he started his career as the master of skeletonized timepieces. Next to Mr. Armin Strom's shop in the old town of Burgdorf, my father was running an optician shop. So I know Armin since I'm a child. Armin was famous in that village because he was driving a red Jaguar E-Type. He was hand delivering his watches worldwide. So he was a bit a legend and very famous person. in our village.
Good business then.
Yeah, good business. Yeah, and my childhood friend Serge, which I grew up together with him. We went to kindergarten, then went to school together. Approached me actually when I was in Christophe Claret, because Serge is a watch collector. Serge and his father, had a close relationship with Armin, and one day they picked up a watch at Mr. Armin Strom's shop, and Armin Strom was considering of maybe handing over his business to someone. And so this is how the journey started, when Serge called me up and said, listen, there may be an opportunity that we could take over our local heritage of watchmaking. And this is the first like step which we got to take over the brand.
And as a child, did you also visit his workshop to have a look and admire his work, or was it not open for?
Honestly, when I was young, he was quite a strong person, big, massive built, and a little bit scary for us as young.
Big moustache
already? Big moustache, yes.
Right.
And so for us, we had a lot of respect for him, because he was like, he was very nice to everybody, and but he was, you know how watchmakers are. Watchmakers are maybe not the most open, socializing people, so he was a little bit more into what he's doing, and yeah.
Okay, nice.
Fantastic. Now, obviously, we spoke about the brand's DNA with skeletonization and open worked movements, right? How do you think that defines the brand's identity today?
Well, first, that's the reason why we took over the brand, is not because it was a famous brand, Armin Strom. Back in the days, I mean, Armin Strom did about 20 to 25 watches a year, because he still had the collaborations with other brands going on, which we mentioned. One of the most successful was with Omega, which took a lot of his capacity, but he did 20 to 25 watches every year under his name, Armin Strom. And the vision of having a movement visible from the front and from the back side, and that the movement should be the star of a watch brand, in 2009, when we took over, was for us was a perfect match to build up a brand. But what we realized in the very first discussion we had, and the first, like, you know, if you have a get together with a school friend, like as a collector and a watchmaker, and there comes this opportunity to maybe take over a brand, there's a lot of conversations going on. You drink a lot of beer, you drink a lot of wine. There's a lot of ideas which we were talking about, and we realized that what Mr. Armin Strom did, he was writing chapter 1 for the brand. The man himself wrote chapter 1 with his way of hand skeletonizing watches. And if hand skeletonization is like an artwork, there was a reason why Omega hired Mr. Armin Strom, because I mean they had more than 300 watchmakers working at the factory, because he had a unique style of how he created the skeletonized timepieces. And we said it would be wrong to hire people to copy the style of Mr. Armin Strom. So we said, okay, now it's time to write chapter 2 of the brand, and the chapter 2 is the manufacturing, because we realized that if we want to push the brand and want to build a proper brand out of a one-man show, first of all, we need movements. 2009 was a period where the ETA was not delivering movement, or they had this vision of not delivering movement to any other brand. There was a little bit of Sopro, Celita movements which were around, but they didn't answer to what we were looking for. We were looking for open worked watches. We were looking for something unique, something which is different than what the other brands offer, because our approach was completely different. When you have a skeletonized brand, is when you take an existing movement and you open work a movement. We wanted to create open worked movement which are built to be open worked.
Right.
And therefore we decided to become a manufacturer, to be able to have to realize our dream of how a watch should look like.
And you established that in Biel from the start.
Yes, Armin Strom was he moved his workshop to Biel to be closer to the watch industry, because of the several collaborations he had with other brands. And for us, it was very obvious to open the factory in Bienne, because Bienne, we have 2 watchmaker schools. There is Omega, there's Rolex, there's Swatch. There's a lot of watchmaking knowledge in the town.
Yeah.
A lot of watchmaking knowledge from the Jura. And so for us, it definitely made more sense to create the manufacturing in Bienne than to create the manufacturing in Burgdorf, where we have to convince people to drive an hour from where they live to build that factory. And the supplier situation, everything is just, it's called the watch city. I think there's Geneva is the watch city, and Bienne is a watch city. And so it made definitely sense for us to be in Bienne.
Yeah.
We don't live in Bienne, we work in Bienne.
Lucky you.
Yeah.
I've been there a few times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And so of course you took this this sort of seed from the first chapter of skeletonization, hand skeletonization, turned it into the brand's current philosophy of transparency and having these movements that are built to be skeletonized. And so when designing a new movement or collection, where does the process begin? Is it engineering, aesthetics, or is it something else that guides the process?
It's definitely, engineering is very important to Armin Strom. I got, my inspiration is a bit Abraham Louis Breguet. Abraham Louis Breguet is one of the biggest watchmakers. But Abraham Louis Breguet did never take reference on the past. He always looked into the future. So innovation was very important to the biggest watchmakers which we are aware of. They became successful because they were ready to invent new watchmaker ideas and to push the mechanical components further to have the watches running more precise or to indicate different functions. And this is what absolutely what drives Armin Strom main motivation is to create something unique. There was never the idea to just relaunch another 3-hand watch. To give you an idea, the Tribute 1, our tribute to a classic dress watch, which is 3-hand hand-wound, has 100 hours of power reserve because there is room to improve. When you take the decision to become a movement manufacturer, it's not only to be independent and to be able to produce our own movement. Our wish from the beginning and the motivation was to create a playground where we are able to innovate the watch movement. And this was very important. I think therefore innovation is very important, but there's also the brand philosophy which drives a bit the new products. Is the commitment to hand finishing is important. I mean, don't forget that the very early watchmakers who were focusing on hand decoration were the guys doing hand skeletonized movements because they couldn't hide decoration with the dial. Everything was visible, so the movement became the dial. So every like little thing which was unpolished looked somehow rough from the dial side. So they had to focusing on hand finishing, and this is also something which we took from Mr. Armin Strom, is that commitment to hand finishing. So there's a lot of ingredients when we create a new watch. There's a lot of ingredients coming together. There's also the customer, which is important.
For sure.
But I think there's a little bit of mix of different inputs, which brings us to a new idea, and then we start to work from scratch. Actually, this is.
So you do take feedback from existing or new customers at heart.
Very. This is also why I'm really enjoying having conversation during the watch shows. I mean, watch shows for me, honestly, Watches and Wonders is a business to business watch show, which is important for us as a brand to work with our retailers. The feedback from our partners are important, but the most important feedback for us is the feedback which we get from the end consumer. Is it an event together with a retail partner? Is it an event like Watch Time New York or Dubai Watch Week, or more the shows focusing on end consumers? I mean, only when if you present 4 or 5 watches and you realize that which one get picked first, gives you an idea of why this got picked first. There's no price ticket. There must be something in the design which people like. Is it the color? Is it the size? Is it the? And then during conversations, I try to get the input and the wishes from the clients, because at the end of the day we build the watches for people, and we also want to answer a little bit to what they are looking for. We can surprise by like putting innovation ingredients, but I mean sizes and functions are very important.
But during the Watches and Wonders, for example, where you get retailers to visit you, they also pick certain watches first, I guess, or is that different?
They do pick watches first, but it's for. I think it's more like a business relationship we have together.
Yeah.
They know their customers and they know what they're gonna offer to their customers. But most of them, they have several brands, so they can, with several brands, they can offer several products.
Yeah.
Which is then is a little bit somehow a filter for us, because we don't get the full like feedback which we are normally focusing on when we talk to an end consumer.
Yeah.
To an end consumer, it's like, it's straightforward, I would say.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And how many retailers do you have currently?
We are round about at 33 retailers
Worldwide. And do you also sell directly?
We do sell directly. Yeah. We don't have a monobrand boutique.
Yeah.
We have the manufacturing in Bienne.
Exactly.
There's people coming and picking up at the manufactory.
Special treatment.
Special treatment. But most of the time it's more like the experience, which is very important.
Yeah, exactly.
They want to be close to the brand.
Yeah.
Most of the time are people that own more than one Armin Strom watches, and or they customize their piece, and they want to get the full experience. And we also have retail partners bringing their customer to the manufacturer to get the full experience. But we do both, because I think the reason why we still do direct sales is because we do not cover all the countries worldwide with our retail network. This is
clear.
Okay. And you've brought some watches here today, and obviously we were having a look at them before we started recording. There are some things that very quickly stand out. Like you say, people will gravitate to certain things. But going back to innovation, the resonance clutch spring, that was quite a remarkable innovation from the brand. And I wanted to ask you, how did the idea come about, and what were some of the challenges to get it working and functioning?
Well, the idea of resonance is something which I discovered during my studies in watch restoration. I was able to disassemble a double pendulum clock.
Okay.
And this was in around about 2000, 2001. And 2000, 2001, there was on the World Wide Web, there were no information about watchmaking available. And I quickly realized that it's a resonance double pendulum clock. Because it was built by Anti-Janvier, and I had to go to the library and find information about resonance. And what I realized is that everybody was talking about resonance, but there was just a little bit of technical information available, like how Brücke failed on his pocket watch, and so I saw that there's like this phenomenon was driving a lot of watchmakers to try to invent a movement which takes benefit of the synchronization, but not a lot of them really succeeded.
Right.
And this was, for me, was like an unsolved problem, but it got a lot of attention because it was very cool. This idea of having, as a physical basic law, if you have two things which combine, the frequency or the output just gets more consistent. And but forgot about it. I mean, it was not something which was all the time in my head till I got in contact with flexible suspension mechanisms. And this was due to a visit I did at an aerospace engineering company. And they explained me how flexible suspension mechanism works and how much new developments they could realize, also most of the time mechanically built solutions. And I quickly realized that there is like an option that could open a new field for watchmaking. And the resonance, for people who do not know what resonance is exactly, it's a very difficult name, because there's résonance, there's renaissance, there's résonance, so it's a confusing name. But actually, the phenomenon of resonance is known of the phenomenon of synchronization.
Right.
Discovered by a Dutch physician, Christian Huygens.
Who is, by the way, lived not very far from here.
True. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
exactly.
like I think 500 meters.
Yeah.
Yeah, the museum. Yeah,
Yeah.
true. The house.
So he was not. He didn't invented the pendulum. Actually, the idea from the pendulum comes from Galileo Galilei, but Christian Huygens was the first who was able to realize a clock with a pendulum.
Right.
And it was during his studies on pendulum clocks he discovered that two clocks which were sitting on a wooden beam that they started to synchronize. So resonance is known as a complication when you have two movements built in one watch and they synchronize each other. The frequency becomes more consistent because we still have to realize that mechanical components, even on the latest CNC technology, we still have to handle little imperfections.
Right.
And so a mechanical movement, unfortunately, due to the fact that the components have to work together, the torque transmission is not very accurate. So we always get this up and downs, a little bit more torque, less torque, more torque, depends on how the gear train sets. Also a lot of when we wear the watch, there's gravity, there's a lot of movement, wrist movements involved. So it definitely makes sense to have, instead of just one balance wheel working on its own, to have another one helping that balance wheel. The question is, how do they synchronize? Right. What we learned in the past, which is proven by physics, is that we need a transmitter to get the two balance wheels in sync. So we have a first frequency, we have the second frequency, and if they start to synchronize, and the way how they synchronize in physics is known as the shared mode of motion, you need a third frequency to bring them to beat in sync.
Right.
Which got discovered by Abraham Louis Breguet and Henri Janvier. Henri Janvier said, as soon as I shared the suspension of the two pendulum, I reached a proper resonance or a synchronization. It was not the air between the pendulums which brought them in sync. It was the suspension, that he shared the suspension. Abraham Louis Breguet said it was the transmission of micro vibration which goes through the movement, which brings them to beat in sync. A little bit, he took reference on the wooden beam of Christian Huygens. It's just that transmission through the movement, through main plates and bridges, is just not an optimum environment to transmit vibrations.
Right.
And therefore, what we did with the resonance clutch is we offered a built-for-purpose suspension, which is a flexible element who transmits vibration from one balance wheel to the other. And this guarantees that the two balance wheels or the two oscillators are fully in sync. And once they are in sync, the time becomes more consistent and the time becomes also more precise because they average each other out.
And we've seen you sort of over the years take that idea and create watches that were at the beginning quite large on the wrist. We've seen some of the originals, and you've refined that idea down to now being able to put it in watches that are extremely wearable, or you know, for the fact that it's this mechanical innovation. I mean, it's become like a very impressive thing to have in a watch that feels at home on the wrist, right? It's really,
the downsizing was a bit because it's not only the challenge to have the double amount of components, like two barrels, two gear trains, two escapements, two balance wheels. It's also the flexible element is what took us more than 3 years to develop. From the first idea of having a transmitter of vibration to find a way that there's a lot of things we have to handle, and it gets very complex when we have to analyze what the clutch has to do, because it's not just transmitting vibration from one hairspring to the other, because at the end of the hairspring we have the stud, and the hairspring has to open and close without changing the center of gravity. So there's a lot of things in this shape of the clutch which we had to consider. And it's a multifunctional clutch, and that's, by the way, the secret of flexible suspension. You can answer to several problems with one built-for-purpose spring. And this is what this was the most difficult part, to get everything downsized in a smaller case. The first one, as you mentioned, was 43, 43.5, I guess. The new one is 43, the mirrored force resonance. And now we just have the dual time
Right.
GMT resonance, which is in a 39
Yeah.
millimeter case.
And of course everything still with this sort of architectural skeletonized signature touch that you give the movements, right? I mean, it's on top of that, it's the
Absolutely.
extra challenge on top.
By the way, the first resonance was not supposed to be on the dial side.
Okay.
When we discovered resonance and the idea, and we started to work on the patent and to finalize the shape of the spring, and we tested several ideas, the balance wheels were always on the back. Like in
Right,
System
right.
78, we always have the balance on the classic approach, like the balance wheel is on the back side. And when we saw how cool that animation is, how cool it is to visually see how the two balance wheel drift in sync and how they work in sync, we said, no, okay, this is something which has to be on the dial side. And this took us, we took an extra a few months to release the product to make sure that we can bring everything, the animation, on the dial side.
Right.
Must have been a very exciting period because you put so much capacity and time and money invested in this resonance system, with also the idea to attract new customers, right? To draw attention for something that you invented, and that to me that sounds very perhaps nerve-wracking because you're working on something new that has not been done before in this scale and for these types of watches. You don't know if there is a demand for them, right?
Yeah.
Or was there demand for this from your customers?
No,
or did you
because
think, this might attract a new?
No, that was a completely new. That
customers.
was a completely new. Also for us, when we go back to where we started in 2009, because first we had to prove that we are able to realize our own movements, and so as I would say, like for the first 4 or 5 years, we were focusing on quality on our own produced movements. We had a double barrel movement the previous 1 week. We had a tourbillon. We had kind of innovation, but it was not like something very complicated. And then the resonance is something which just happened because it was by chance that maybe I was at the right time at the right place to get the inspiration and then to push that everything. There was a lot of, and honestly, when we were a young team, only I think back in the days we were like 12 people, 11 or 12 people working at Armin Strom. It was me doing engineering together with one watchmaker. And to be able to succeed on a resonance clutch spring, which is completely new, and you have to break existing rules to get this flexible thing working, we realized that that's something we cannot just do in-house. We have to have people who are used to work with the flexible suspensions. We need people who can do animations to see because we couldn't we did about 30 different shapes of springs. And then we said, okay, now it's almost done, but we still have to improve. And then it was by chance, and this is how things happen in life, we got a contact to the CEO of the Centre Scientifique Électronique et Microtechnique, the CSM in Neuchâtel. And the CSM, they are known for pushing innovation in mechanical, micromechanical industries and in the watch industry. They actually built it, they were really, really involved in the whole silicon technology in the watch industry. And we went to see that guy, showed him our prototype. We had a patent already because there was nothing done which linked system between two balance wheels. And he was like, oh, okay, no problem. We have this is exactly what we do. We can help you guys finalizing the last little issues. But a collaboration is about something close to 1 million Swiss francs.
Right.
And we said, okay, we are 12 people in a company which just started buying machines 5 years ago. We still pay the rentals on the machine. We still pay the rentals on our building. So how can we afford a million for something which we don't know if people gonna buy.
Exactly.
Because it's not a tourbillon or a perpetual calendar where there's people buying such stuff. And so we went back home, and then like a few days later I called him. I said, look, listen, I'm so sorry, but this is like out of budget. We cannot afford such an investment for a new watch, which there's one or two watches out there with a different approach. They maybe do the same job, but it's not. So should we take the risk? Are the people willing to invest in such a new thing? So we said, okay, no, that's maybe it's a bit too dangerous. And then the guy, but really felt in love with that resonance thing, and he said, like, there is a way of how we can collaborate, but we have to do a demand at the government for innovation and technology, and to see if we get this project financed by the government.
Yeah.
The downside, he said, is that all the studies will be public. And we said, no, it's not, for us, there's no issue, because anyhow, if we launch the watch, we're going to publish all the informations, because our customers, they want to know if there's a real benefit or if there is no benefit.
Yeah.
And if there is no benefit, we wouldn't launch. So it definitely makes sense to share the information with everybody. And it was then thanks to that collaboration and the government, they saw the potential of a small, young watch company trying to create the brand, trying to create new, to hire new people. And this is how we got financed by the government to work together with the university to finalize the clutch.
Yeah. Interesting.
It's really the sort of the challenges that independent brands can face, right? You have a lot of ambition, you have projects like this that you want to realize, and then getting the resources together, I think can often be a challenge. But we've seen how the independent scene has kind of evolved over the years. I mean, I think that in the 15, 16 years that Armin Strom has been around as it is, you've probably also noticed a lot of this. How does that changing landscape sort of affect the way that you guys approach making watches and innovation?
I think innovation becomes even more important now. As you mentioned, there is like a big demand in independent brands, in hand-finished products, in well-done watches, and brands focusing not on Formula One or sailing or other activities, that there is a need of companies focusing on watchmaking.
Right.
A watch, we know that a watch is always transmits emotions. The question is, where do these emotions come from? Do they come from cars, sailing, horses,
marketing,
golf, football, or is it from watchmaking? And I think the independent watch world is acting to the demand of that. People want to know and learn more about watchmaking. So when we then have a closer look on how exciting watchmaking is happening, is we have the tradition of doing hand finishing, of doing well done movements, like mirror polishing the screws, hand bevel the edges, and all that stuff. But on the other hand, that became a little bit like a standard over the last few years. And this is why I mentioned at the beginning Abraham Louis Breguet. I think innovation is even more important today, because when we still compete in the independent world with other brands, and we want to, we are friends. There's not a hard competition that we say, okay, if you are with a retailer, I don't gonna work with these retailers. No, we all we share a little bit the same retail network. We share the same communities, but still, I mean, the day when you wake up and you don't want to be ahead of your competitors, I think that's the day you should not lead a company anymore. So innovation is even more important now. And I think that the consumers who are looking for independent brands, they also learned us that they are willing to buy, as you mentioned at the beginning, a new resonance complication, that they are ready to invest in new watchmaker ideas. And the fact that we have 3D development, we have the latest CNC technology, there is room to improve the mechanical movement, even if it's still a mechanism which is built with mechanical components, but there is room to improve. And I think this motivation that you are willing to improve, combined with the tradition of hand finishing, the respect to our heritage in watchmaking, which is very important in Switzerland. We got trained by, especially if you get trained in watch restoration, you really realize what it means that to work in a traditional métier. And but innovation, I think that's the new thing. What watchmakers should try to improve.
So for our viewers and for our listeners of the podcast, perhaps it's good to understand what does the resonance complication or mechanics bring to them? What does it deliver?
First of all, it delivers
in performance.
In performance, it's consistency. And so now when we dive a little bit into what happens in a mechanical watch. A standard mechanical watch is a barrel, a gear train, escapement, a balance wheel.
Exactly.
So when I move my wrist due to gravity, due to the movements I do on my wrist, I always have an impact on the oscillator. The oscillator can go faster or slower. It depends on in which direction I move my wrist. We, with our resonance, it's called the mirrored force resonance. So we have one balance wheel turning in one direction, the other one in the opposite direction. It's an anti-phase synchronization. So when I move my wrist, one of them will automatically speed up and the other one at the same time will slow down. The fact that they are linked to each other and they share their vibrations, not both of them will go faster and not both of them will go slower. They always try to average each other out. So the consistency during the day is much more precise than a regular watch. So that's, for example, if you have like a hanging bridge and you walk over a hanging bridge, the hanging bridge is the flexible suspension element. You can walk faster or slower. It doesn't matter because you decide on the rhythm. If you walk together with someone on a suspension bridge, first of all, you're going to realize after, let's say it's a long suspension bridge, not a short one, a long one.
Right.
So after time, you will automatically realize that the bridge creates a frequency. And it's easier for you to step down at the same time when your colleague is stepping down.
Exactly.
So up and down and up and down, you will synchronize in between you and the bridge. Now imagine if one of you guys would like to go faster or slower, the other one and the bridge will make sure that the three of you holding the frequency which you designed it at the beginning. So you become automatically, your journey from the one end to the other end of the suspension bricks is much more consistent. Your average speed will be much more consistent than if you would walk by your own over that bridge. And that's in watchmaking is not only, this is what I mentioned, it's how precise a watch is depends on a lot of factors. It's also the watchmaker who sets up the watch. The more time you give to a good watchmaker who has a good feeling of how to set up the time, he can bring the watch as close to zero as it gets.
So that's basically my bottom line. That's basically my question. What's the effect or output on that? So is it measurable that the accuracy of Armin Strom watch is much better with the resonance system than without?
On a wearing, it's first of all, in numbers, it's always difficult to say. But if, let's say, if you have two movements which are not in sync and you bring them in sync, it's about the average gain of 15%. When you wear the watch, and that's just by experience. I have a mirrored force resonance, the first edition, and I lose. I think if with the standard watch, which I do regulate in somewhere between 0 to 4 seconds, after a month, I'm somewhere in over, I would say, 15 to 20 seconds. I'm either faster or slower. That's so the average, which even if the watch is good set, also due to my movements or my wrist, maybe I don't wear the watch automatically every day because I swip the watches. Sometimes they just sit on the table and then I put and I switch. So average is about something which, that's a number which I figured out the way how I wear, 20 seconds. The resonance, I'm closer to 0. I'm somewhere in between 1.5 and 2 seconds.
Okay.
On the wearing watch.
Wow.
And that's kind of been the quest of some of the people that you mentioned, right? Like, I mean, Abraham Louis Breguet, the inventor of the tourbillon, famously, and that was also a method to try and create this this consistency specifically for pocket watches. We've also seen constant force mechanisms to try and do the same thing, because, like you say, there's so many different factors, how wound the mainspring is, or even resonance. But I think it's, in the end, it's ultimately this quest for accuracy, right? That really drives the innovation there.
Absolutely, yeah. And as you mentioned, all the complications which we already have to make the watch more accurate. There's so many problems, and unfortunately, there's not one solution answering to all the problems. We have the mainspring, we have the gear train, we have the escapement, we have the balance wheel, we have the hairspring. So there's a lot of factors where we can start to improve. From a standard mechanism. And I think this is what drives me every day going to the factories, because I know that the perfect watch doesn't exist. There's still, I think that will be the combination of the perfect amount of complications which do answer to all that problem, that we can work on a perfect watch.
And that's just internal factors, right? I mean, you can account for, then, like you said, like shocks, temperatures, all the temperature changes, this kind of thing. I mean, there's so much that plays into it, but it's ultimately this quest. And I think it's interesting that you point out that there is this spirit of camaraderie with other independent brands, that it's a kind of a rising tide that raises all ships, right? That you do compete, that you want to compete, that you see them as the competition, but that at the same time there is this sort of almost collaborative spirit. So speaking of which, looking ahead, what are some innovations or directions for the brand that excite you, looking at maybe the next decade of Armin Strom?
Definitely, the resonance has a huge potential. For now, we just make the movement more accurate.
Right.
But we do not take benefit. The dual time does a little bit take the benefit of having two movements, and it indicates two time displays. But there's much more to discover when you have two movements which do beat in sync, because a lot of complications do struggle with energy. There are still some other unsolved problems. The balance wheels, the position of the balance wheel. There's a lot of things we can improve. So there's definitely more innovation which will be released from Armin Strom.
Perfect.
Unfortunately, it's not unfortunately. The good thing is the independent brands became successful because we have much more demand than we had the years before. That's a little bit a challenge from a production perspective. We have to focus on increasing the production. That's something we want to do. We want to offer a little bit more than what we offer today. So there's this like daily challenge of training people for decoration, finding people who are willing to work in this haute horlogerie sector, because when a watchmaker assembles an Armin Strom movement, that's a different challenge than assembling an industrial product, because
of course
everything which gets scratched or damaged will be straight away visible. So there is like a very high pressure for the watchmakers to assemble and disassemble the movement. This is why we assemble them twice. We assemble them a first time with some working screws, what we call them, where they're just a function, and there's a recleaning, and there's a final assembling with the mirror polish screws to make sure that everything is perfectly after cleaning, without using tools to readjust any function. So that's I think that's the situation where I am today, is to find people to react to the demand and to be able to have even more room for innovation in the next few years. That's a bit the goal. There's a lot of things going on now in the R&D. We are a little R&D team, but we have some exciting movements coming next year.
Nice. Perfect. Perfect. And so to kind of wrap things up for this episode, and on a bit of a personal note, when someone picks up when someone picks up an Armin Strom watch for the first time, what is it that you hope that they'll feel?
I hope that they feel this moment where they can really dive into the movement. I think an Armin Strom watch is something that's three-dimensional movement allows you to really dive into that movement, which is maybe from a first, when the very first time you see an Armin Strom movement, it looks like a watch. When you wear an Armin Strom watch, it feels so much different. Depends on daylight, depends on your mood, depends on how you can, what you see in the watch. I get that's the feedback I get from a lot of customers is they say like even after 2 years I still discover like little things, and sometimes they send me a picture and they say, you guys even polish that little detail. That drives me nuts, that you go so much into detail. And I took a microscope and I had to have a closer look because I realized that there was something little like shiny element below, and this is what's fun about wearing an Armin Strom.
Fantastic.
You also said I like going to Dubai Watch Week and events and talk to collectors, and that the environment of independent watchmaking is very friendly. Of course, there's competition, but it's also very friendly. What are other brands that you keep an eye on that you find interesting from a design perspective or from an innovation perspective?
That's a good question. I think there is, as a watch fan,
yes,
I love what big brands do. I'm not. I mean, Rolex did a great job with the new escapement, which was very exciting for me to discover what they did from a movement perspective. I have some brands like from the independent world. I would say most of them. I just realized that when I was in New York 3 weeks ago, and like just before the watch show started, I always try to go and see what my colleagues do. And I saw so much cool things from German watch brands, from very niche small watch brands up to bigger watch brands. I can't really say that's a cool thing. There is no like bad things, really bad things made. There's nothing bad out there at the moment. I think otherwise they don't survive. I think we see the brands who try to. We have more news about going bankrupt and getting relaunched and getting bankrupt and relaunched. I think those brands, I'm not so much into it. I mean, for me, if someone runs behind money, that's not how you drive a watch company. Money is, we have to be fair and honest. Money is important, but money does not drive a watch company. It's the people who are behind the watch company, especially in the independent world. It's the passion and the philosophy and the goals people have, and if the consumer can feel what they try to create, and that fits somehow to a taste, they will have success. Bigger or smaller success, but at least they survive, and it gives them the opportunity to drive their business. If people just focusing on money and they hire people to get things done, that's not the way how independent watchmaking world works. You can have a passion for dial, you can have a passion for case material. It doesn't matter, as long as you have a passion, a vision, and a dream. I think you will be successful. If you're just hiring or try to get as many investors convinced and then earning as much money in a short period of time, that doesn't drive a watch company.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I think we can wrap it up here. So thank you very much, Claude, for joining us on the show today. It's been really great hearing from you about some of the technical innovations behind Armin Strom, and it seems that it's there's a certain optimism for the future of independence, and we see you guys as one of the people leading the way for that. So thank you very much for making it out and talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
Perfect. And thank you for tuning in to our listeners and viewers. Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section below, any questions that perhaps you might have for Claude. And as always, join us next week for another episode of Fratello Talks. See you then.